Just to let you know, anybody that signed in for this town hall, we're at 2:58 p.m. So we have a few more minutes. So just hang tight and we'll launch. Welcome to the Delaware Valley Veterans Consortium virtual town hall. We are still going to hold off for a couple minutes, just allow people to sign in before we start the formal part of our program. Thanks. For those of you who have signed in, if you're here for the virtual town hall, you're in the right place. We're just going to wait about a minute or two more to get more people, to let people sign in before we start on the formal portion. Thanks. If you're having any challenges or you need to say anything to anybody, you can use the chat function that's part of Zoom at the bottom of your screen. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second virtual Veterans Town Hall. I've got 3:02 p.m., so I think we'll still have some people joining us, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon. I hope everybody had a good Memorial Day weekend. My name is Hugo Lenza. I'm the Chief Strategic Partnerships Officer for the Travis Manion Foundation, as well as the chairman of the Delaware Valley Veterans Consortium. And today I'm wearing my Delaware Valley Veterans Consortium hat. This is the second virtual Veterans Town Hall that I've been a part of since the pandemic forced us to change how we now communicate and get together. I want to say thank you very much to the Cohen Clinic for running the first one. That was kind of a general town hall about how organizations are reacting to the COVID pandemic. The Delaware Valley Veterans Consortium is the area's community veteran engagement board, and our mission is to unite military and veteran service organizations and advocates who share common goals to build programmatic capacity and increase services to clients under the umbrella of regional collaboration. This town hall is designed to share information and provide resource information to veterans and their families. So I think most of you are probably aware that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and today's town hall is focused on mental wellness during the pandemic. There are many aspects of our current normal that can be stressful, limiting our social engagements, losing a job, not seeing parents or children, working from home, and uncertainty about how long this will continue, how the virus will be eliminated, and how long until a vaccine is available, and the list goes on. We have a panel made up of representatives from several organizations that provide mental health services to veterans and their family members. Today, we'll hear from each of them, and if you need some help getting through this stressful time or know someone who does, I'm sure that one of these organizations can help. During the course of this town hall, if you have a question for one of our panelists, please type it into the Q&A box. So if you hover over the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see some icons down there. Please use the Q&A function. The chat function is enabled, although we've seen in the past that the chat moves quickly enough that the Q&A is the way to guarantee to get your question in front of the panelists. If your question's for a specific panel member, please put their name or their organization with your question so I can direct it appropriately. At the end of the panelist presentations, we will ask the questions that have been entered into the box. And if we run out of time and you include your email address with your question, we can get you an answer. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It's time to hear from our panelists. I'll introduce each of today's panelists who will make a short presentation about their organizations, the services they provide. And after we hear from each of the panelists, there will be an opportunity for them to answer questions that have been previously submitted. Also, we'll share the slide presentation with everyone who has pre-registered for today's town hall within a few days after the conclusion of this program. If you have not pre-registered and would like a copy of the slides, please put your name and email and address in the chat box. So our first organization is the Corporal Michael J. Crescenz Veterans Administration Medical Center. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Paul Kettl. Dr. Kettl is a psychiatrist with the Medical Center here in Philadelphia and is clinical professor of psychiatry at the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. He currently serves as a psychiatrist on the suicide prevention team at the Crescenz VA Medical Center. And Dr. Kettl, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, thank you. And I'm happy to talk with you about both mental health needs during the crisis as well as we here are meeting them. Next slide. What you can see is that there's a variety of data available. That is, this is not the first emergency that we've had to deal with and had mental health problems. After 9/11, about half the people in New York City had symptoms. Anxiety and depressive symptoms were common. After Katrina, however, there was about a 5 to 10% increase in the number of people with mental health diagnoses. In other words, there's a difference between symptoms and diagnoses. Virtually all of us have had an increase in symptoms with the pandemic, but about 5 to 10% after Katrina had an increase in diagnosis. About 2/3 of people after Katrina were seen for an increase in therapy visits. Most of this was for crisis intervention. Interestingly, after Katrina, there was a lower amount of suicidal ideation and plan, and so far we have not seen an increase in referrals either to the high-risk list for suicide or to our inpatient units. COVID-19 may be different in that it's longer, meaning that it's been going on for a long time, not simply an event that happened for a day. We also have a double punch of a pandemic and an economic hit of an unemployment rate of about 15 to 20%. Next slide. So what we anticipate is that there'll be an increase in anxiety and depressive symptoms. The guess is about 20%. What we've seen so far is that nationwide, there's been an increase of 20% prescriptions. Probably an increase in domestic and relationship problems because everybody's cooped up together. We hope that there will be a decrease in drug-related visits or emergencies. We've seen a decrease in drug-related visits, decrease in emergency room visits, as well as a decrease in referrals from primary care. Initially, it was down about 35 to 40%. Now those numbers are coming back closer to what they're used to. Again, there's been no increase in suicidal behavior. We do think that the looming economic impact will lead to an increase in referrals to mental health care. That is, there'll be increase in stress. But in addition to that, the VA is often seen as kind of a safety net insurance program. As more vets lose their insurance, they'll turn to the VA for care. New slide. So how do you get to care? Well, first of all, we are open and have remained open. That is, the emergency room, urgent care, opiate treatment program, and inpatient units are all open for care. The clinical work overall is about 90% of what it was. It's mostly by phone and growing amounts of video links. So how do you get care? If you're interested, you can call us at 215-823-4541. Again, anybody can call 215-823-4541 and get care. There also are fully vetted government apps available. COVID Coach, which goes through both relaxation techniques as well as other ways. PTSD Coach Online is available in mindfulness apps. They're all available at https://mobile.va.gov/app store. And that's available. If you click on that link, that will take you to these online apps that are available as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kettl. I appreciate it. And just as a reminder, rules of engagement for you veterans out there, housekeeping for you non-veterans. Just a reminder that please use the Q&A box. We're monitoring chat again, but the Q&A box is the way to get your question asked. And please use, for instance, if it's for Dr. Kettl, just mention his name or the VA and your question, and we'll do our best to get it answered. Thank you, Dr. Kettl. All right, our next panelist is Steve Roll. Steve is the Veterans Outreach Program Specialist with the Bucks County Vet Center, located in Bristol, PA. As with most team members of the Vet Center program, Steve is a veteran, having served 1980 to 1990. He holds a master's degree in counseling from the College of New Jersey and is a licensed associate counselor in New Jersey. Thanks for being with us, Steve.
It's my pleasure. So the Vet Center program, basically, next slide, please. What we do, we're part of what's called the Readjustment Counseling Service. And what we do is we provide readjustment counseling, obviously, for veterans who are either returning from active duty, from being deployed, because we see active duty as well, or they are transitioning from military to the civilian world. And so what we do is we'll help veterans who have been in a combat zone specifically, and also military sexual trauma related issues. Those are the two primary things that we see. So we, as a service, we are primarily trauma based. So we are, all of our treatments are trauma informed, and you can see on the screen here that what the different services that we are providing right now. We have been providing this. We've been here since the beginning. We have not shut down at all. The only difference that we have right now is that we are all of our services are being done either by phone or by video chat. So that's the only difference. We're not seeing in-person clients. So we do individual and group counseling. We are doing family counseling, bereavement counseling for anyone who was killed while on active duty, while serving on active duty. As I said before, military sexual trauma. And that would be whether, as long as you are also, again, on active duty, whether out in the civilian world or what have you, we would see anyone who is a survivor of military sexual trauma. The outreach is what I do. And of course, we don't provide specific benefits counseling, but what we can do is anyone who has a question about benefits, we'll answer whatever we can. But whatever we can't answer, we'll go ahead and we'll refer them on to other folks who can, whether it's county offices, whether it is the veterans, the VBA, the Veterans Business Benefits Administration. We'll get you where you need to be. Employment referrals as well. We do get job postings sometimes. Mostly we'll send folks over to CareerLink, those kinds of things. So our services really haven't changed a whole lot since we've been for the COVID. We're still doing what we always do. We're still doing counseling. We're just doing it by phone and by video chat. Next slide, please. So there isn't a 24/7 hotline service. It's the Vet Center call center, 877 War Vets, and that is around the clock confidential call center. Does provide a warm handoff to all vet centers if if the call comes in during business hours, and it'll also do a warm handoff to the crisis line. But if it comes in after business hours, we will be notified after that, and either by the Vet Center call center or by the crisis line, we'll get that referral and we'll reach out to the individuals that are in need of our services. So I think that's going to wrap it up for me for right now.
Thanks, Steve. We appreciate it. Okay, so next up is the Cohen Clinic. It's my pleasure to introduce Asheigh Adams. Dr. Adams is a psychologist, an individual and couples therapist at the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic at the University of Pennsylvania. Her clinical work focuses on post-traumatic stress disorder, substance use disorders, chronic pain, aging issues, moral injury, combat exposure, and sexual assault. Dr. Adams, thanks for being with us today.
Hi, yes, thanks for having me and thanks for doing this. So yeah, the Cohen Clinic, like it sounds like a lot of people, we've been fully operational the whole time during COVID. We've been fully remote since the 16th of March, and we're doing almost, I would say 95 or up percent telehealth with some phone sessions for people who are unable to do video for various reasons. So our clinic has been around for, I think, 4 years. I should know, but that's my best guess. And we do evidence-based mental health care at no cost. We get people in within a week or two of their first call. And we provide mainly therapy for adults, also children, couples, and families. But we also provide case management for therapy clients as well as their families. We serve veterans with a focus on veterans who served after 9/11, including National Guard and reserves, people who are still in the service in those ways, and regardless of role, discharge status, or combat experience. We also serve family members, so both of veterans as well as active duty service members. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next panelist is joining us today is Susan Neumann Gordon. Sue is a staff therapist at the Council for Relationships, working with couples, families, and individuals in the Wynwood and Bryn Mawr offices, as well as online. She is part of the Council's Transcending Trauma Research Team, a therapist with Headstrong, and a supervisor in the Jefferson University Master's Program in Marriage and Family Therapy. Ms. Gordon, thank you for joining our town hall today. Sorry, Dr. Gordon, you're on mute.
Thank you. So Council for Relationships was founded in 1932 as a couples counseling agency. As it grew, it took on educational functions, training future therapists, as well as research functions. As the mission grew, it became the home for Operation Home and Healing in 2007, where the mental health needs and psychoeducation for veterans had begun to be provided. At the same time, the research arm, housing the Transcending Trauma Project, was doing research on the impact of trauma on individuals, on families, post-generational transmission, and resilience. These two programs under one roof realized that they each had something to offer one another. And as a result, the trauma-informed therapists within that umbrella began to become educated in military culture and PTSD. And so the training opportunities and the ability to provide services for veterans in this venue grew. Today, Council is home to 70 therapists in 10 offices in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, as well as online. And we have students in the postgraduate and master's programs who are trained in military culture and are able to enable us to provide low-fee services to the broader community. Veterans and COVID, we were fortunate enough to receive special funding for what we're calling the CARES initiative. Free mental health services for medical providers, police officers, ongoing and strong target. Okay, I'm sorry. Do you hear me now?
We were losing you, but I think you're on now. So
Do you hear me
I
now?
would go through this slide, Sue. I would go through
Okay,
this slide
good.
again.
Okay, so one of our new initiatives, which we just received funding for, is the CARES initiative, which gives free ongoing.
Okay, Sue, you're breaking up. I'm gonna move to the next
essential
panelist.
personnel, and national.
Okay, we got you now. Let's give it one more try. Okay, Sue, I hate to do this to you, but I don't think you're coming through on a regular basis. So Josh, we're gonna move on to you.
Do you hear me now? Do you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Are you changing anything, Sue? Or,
Yes, I changed my internet connection.
Okay, let's give it
Sorry
another
about
try.
that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so our second program, besides the CARES initiative, is the Headstrong program, which provides post 9/11 veterans who experienced trauma and veterans of any era who suffered military sexual trauma, unlimited counseling at no cost. Our third program recognizes that the impact on military service impacts families as well. And so we offer subsidized services to families, spouses, whether or not the veteran is present. So those three programs are ongoing. We looked at the impact of the pandemic on veterans and realized that crisis can be overwhelming. It reveals vulnerabilities, gaps in preparedness, but also an opportunity to learn, adapt, and innovate. Mental health professionals have posited that trauma from the COVID pandemic can trigger other traumas from childhood or military service, and can intensify PTSD symptoms and so on. In light of this, I'd like to share some of what I and my colleagues through Headstrong have found, which is that our veterans are doing quite well. And when asked why or how, what they're expressing is that their military training and deployment have taught them to follow orders as a group, to look out for each other, to maximize safety. They're familiar with fighting often an elusive enemy, discipline, strategy, and flexibility, even in the face of unknown. So they know it, they've done it, and they've survived. They're resilient in many important ways. We also know there's a couple of things we need to pay attention to. What we're hearing is discomfort and often rage with those who should be doing certain things and are not. They're creating a feeling of danger and risk. There's little patience with, I can't take it anymore, or it's not fair. The military mantra is just get it done. So our job is to acknowledge these feelings, reinforce emotional regulation, and soften the responses so that we preserve mental and physical health, as well as prevent relationship ruptures. As mental health professionals, we are seeing a risk to in the general population. We are seeing some increase in alcohol usage and suicide, contrary to what somebody else presented. And both areas are areas of vulnerability for veterans. Finally, families isolating close quarters can be an obstacle or an opportunity. With fewer distractions, we're encouraging our clients to use the time to foster positive relationships with the people under their roofs, as well as extended friends and family through Zoom. It's an opportunity, and we try to minimize the nature of the obstacle. Council leadership, including our CEO, the daughter of a career Marine officer, have a special commitment to provide the best possible support for those who serve us, and it's a privilege to be part of that effort. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And finally, Josh Jabin, Chief Operating Officer of the Travis Manion Foundation. So full disclosure, Josh and I are colleagues. Josh is also a 19-year veteran of the Marine Corps. He's played a key role in developing Travis Manion Foundation's programs and curriculum to support the mental health and well-being for the veterans and families of the fallen that TMF supports. So Josh, thanks for coming, and it's yours.
Thanks, Hugo. For anyone who is unfamiliar with Travis Manion Foundation, we're a community led by veterans and families of the fallen who serve together and support each other. Our model is we empower veterans and families of the fallen. We give them personal development and leadership training and support, and then give them opportunities to go out and serve through and lead different community events. Our main effort is called Character Does Matter, where we train veterans to go out and deliver our character and leadership curriculum to young adults. Our programming is all based on positive psychology, which teaches us the different components that lead to higher levels of mental health and overall well-being. You can see on my slide the three that we play the biggest role in. And what we found from what positive psychology has taught us and what we found from studies of our own is that there's two main components that play a big part in your overall mental well-being. The first one is having that sense of purpose through serving others. And the other one is the relationships, having that strong support network, that camaraderie that we're used to in the military. And that's what we provide for our engaged members. If you go to the next slide, please. And so during this time of COVID crisis, we've been busier than ever through both of these buckets, the training and support of our members. We've launched into an educational series explaining the basics of positive psychology and those components of well-being that I just talked through, going deeper into some topics of resiliency and emotional and well-being and different trainings and support that we're giving to our members. You know, at first it was more about some of those acute needs, the food and the essential supplies and the transportation, and we took care of that. And now, you know, really it's been about empowering members and giving them those opportunities to go out and serve. We have an initiative called Serve in Place where veterans and families of the fallen and other engaged members have been looking for ways to serve without leaving the house. So collecting essential supplies, going out and getting food and delivering them to food banks or frontline workers or people in need. So I'll stop there, Hugo. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Josh. And just as a reminder, please use the Q&A button. I've already gotten some questions in, so thank you very much. So we're going to go into asking our panelists some specific questions. Some of these will be directed at specific individuals, others will be more general. So Dr. Kettl, you mentioned some phone apps. Can you talk about them, and have they been vetted in any way, and what is the best way to use them?
Yeah, so the apps have been vetted. It's an important question because when you go online to the App Store, you never know what you're getting, who put it up, what kind of research went into it. All of the apps that come out of the VA have been fully vetted by the federal government, meaning that they've been developed by folks who are vetted. They're all free. Your textile or at work, and so they're available again, by going to the mobile.va.gov/app store. And there's a whole wide array of them that are available. In terms of the best way to use them, there's a lot of information on each one, and it can be a little overwhelming. The best thing to do is to shop around, see what you may like, and then come back the next day and also shop around and try something out. Like anything else, the more you use it, the better you get at them, and the better and more useful they are for you. So some data from a couple years ago showed that PTSD Coach Online, for example, had been viewed 1 million times, but 97% of the people had viewed it once. So the key thing is to go and use it and then come back the next day. It's good if you're going to be using it to set a time. Each day you're going to be using it like any other behavioral approach, and use it for certain amount of time, 10 or 15 minutes, come back the next day and use it for 15 minutes again. If you don't like it, then use either another app or another part of the same app that's helpful.
Great, thanks. And obviously these apps are much more geared towards personal well-being, right? These aren't ways to connect with the VA. These are ways to make yourself better. Right,
that these are all apps that are devoted to be used by vets at home, and they're not ways to connect. To connect with the VA, you would call the number that was given earlier, but these are all designed to be used independent of people. There are other vets to be used if you want to use them in connection with psychotherapy, but these are all meant to be used independent of a provider.
Great, and can you give the address again slowly so that people can write it down?
Sure, it's https://mobile.va.gov/app store. But if you just Google VA mobile apps, it'll pop up.
Great.
So mobile.va.gov/app store.
Dr. Kettl, did you just provide that sound effect? Was that you?
I did indeed.
Excellent. That was awesome. All right. Thank you, Dr. Kettl. Steve, I think this is probably a question that you get a lot. How do the mental health services provided at the vet centers differ from those at the medical centers or outpatient clinics?
Yeah, we do get that a lot, actually. So the main difference that we have at the vet centers is, I would call us, for lack of a better word, we're kind of a niche service. Our congressional mandate is that we serve those who have served in combat zones, whether they have been in combat or not. Doesn't really matter as long as they've served in a combat zone, and we have several that are identified. And basically, anyone who's received an Expeditionary Medal of any kind, or the GWAT, the Global War on Terror, the Kuwait Expeditionaries, any of the expeditionary medals, Navy, Marine Corps, Armed Forces, are eligible for our services. I myself did two cruises off Lebanon, so that's one of the areas that falls. Lebanon, Grenada, all of that. And the other thing is so I think I mentioned earlier our two primary focuses are combat vets, war zone vets, and anyone who is a survivor of military sexual trauma, regardless of whether they served in a combat zone or not. So those are our two primaries. And also mortuary services. So anyone who served in, say, at Dover or at Landstuhl, never actually deployed into a war zone, but received human remains from overseas, they are eligible for our services. And also drone operators, unmanned aerial vehicles, the UAVs, are eligible for our services as well. So you could be at Horsham and operating a drone in Kuwait, and so, as long as you're in support of some sort of a combat operation, that's us. So that's the main difference between us and the hospital. The hospital is more, I guess, general, and we're kind of specific to combat vets.
Great. Thank you very much. Dr. Adams, two questions. One is, can you give the contact info for the Cohen Clinic? And then a more pointed question, should someone wait to start therapy until they can come in person? So contact info, and when should people start coming to the clinic or start therapy?
Yeah, thanks for repeating that. I was already putting my fingers up to remind myself. So you can call the front desk 844-573-3146, or you can email MFC info for Military Family Clinic info at pennmedicine.upenn.edu, or you can go on our website, which is just going to send you to both of those options. But you can find out more information about us on pennmedicine.org/veterans. And the second question was, should I wait? No, you should not wait. Obviously I'm a bit biased. I'm sure other people here would agree with me, but if you're thinking therapy would be a good option for you, then it probably would be a good option for you, or at least it's worth exploring, that is. And it sounds like not just our clinic, but all the services are still fully and readily available. Sounds like we've all been able to, turn on a dime to respond to this pandemic. So yes, no, there's no reason to wait.
All right, and if you haven't noticed it, all that information's in the chat box on how to get a hold of the Cohen Clinic. Thanks, Dr. Adams. All right, Sue, for Council for Relationships, what services does CFR offer to veterans and their families, kind of broadly, and then more specifically during COVID? And unmute, there you go.
Okay, the most important and newest service that we have is the CARES initiative, which is free crisis and ongoing therapy for first responders and support personnel who are risking their lives. And that means within 24 hours you call, you get a therapist assigned to you, and you are ready to go online. It can be couples, it can be individuals. These people can also fit into the Operation Home and Healing category if they're families, or into the Headstrong category, but then they need to go through the Headstrong organization. So we are very flexible, quick turnover, and we very much want to be there to help first responders.
Awesome. And with the Headstrong specifically, if somebody wants to avail themselves of Headstrong, that isn't directly through you, it's through the Headstrong website, correct?
Right. They will be, they can be through us, and we'll refer them to Headstrong. They get screened over there, then they come on over to us, and we start with them for free therapy and an unlimited amount of time.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Josh, from your perspective, what are the biggest challenges facing veterans during the current crisis as compared to the population at large?
So we went out with a survey for our members and asked that question to them, and some have acute needs and need the food and essential supplies and transportation, and we've been able to provide that. The majority have been in a position where they're looking for ways to serve others through the different ways that TMF offers, or just reaching out to their neighbors and finding out what their needs are. I would say that the biggest thing that we've learned, though, from calling all of our veterans and families of the fallen and asking them, what their situation is right now, is that everybody's struggling in some way. Nobody's just cruising right now. And the best thing that we can offer to everyone, no matter whether you're in a position where you need some help right now or you're in a position to help somebody else, is think about what are those proactive things that you can do to maintain those overall levels of well-being. Whether that's social connection, whether that's doing something for somebody else if you're able. But as I listen to some of the other speakers, we offer something different. We're a non-clinical form of mental health and well-being. And I think that there's plenty that everybody can do right now to be proactive in their mental health, and make sure that they're doing those tactical things every day to take care of themselves, and keep themselves in a position where they maintain those overall levels of well-being and mental health.
Great, thanks. So Dr. Kettl, this question came in on Q&A. It was a question about the 1918 flu pandemic, and if we have any kind of comparative data of that kind of crisis in our history and the current? Is there anything to learn from the mental health aspect from 1918 versus now?
The flu pandemic of 1918, 1919 was bigger. 650,000 Americans were killed, which compared to the population there was, certainly dramatically higher. Not that losing 100,000 lives to date is a small thing, but 650,000 is bigger. So what happened was that there was, of course, wide outpouring of fear, and people were concerned, and that was all big. And so what happened after that, after the economy opened up, was the Roaring '20s. And so there was a opening sociologically, shall we say, of kind of a wilder appreciation of life. So something like that may be happening. To answer your question more specifically about what did it teach us about mental health care, of course, was not as available in its infancy. And so the impact on outpatient care was, we don't know. There were people who, after the virus, did have specific brain injury. That is, the virus affected all parts and the brain was injured in some people. And there was an increase in obsessive compulsive disorder after the pandemic. And so that was noted as well. So aside from the sociologic impact, we don't have as much in terms of what it says to the impact on the mental health environment in general. I think there's more lessons from 9/11, from Katrina, from the Australian fires. All of those show that there was an increase in anxiety and depression, and that most people who came to care came for really crisis management, and that there was an increase of 5 to 10% in diagnosis of mental health need. We think with this one, it will be probably double that, about 20%. What we can see already is that the prescription of psychoactive drugs has increased about 20% compared to a year ago.
Okay, great. Thanks for a great answer. And somewhat related to that, I think you hinted at this, is a question came in about, is there anything that we can do, since we're talking about veterans, since this is kind of an open-ended issue here, this pandemic, is there anything that's being done to kind of prepare people for the long haul, so to speak? And then is there also the possibility that, and Josh, this might be a good question for you too. Do we think we're going to come out of this kind of more empathetic and passionate and generous than we did going into this? I think that's probably more that's kind of a conjecture question, but let's go with the first one of what does the longer term future look like in terms of mental health care, and what impacts do you think this will have?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, that there will be an increased need, and it's really a two-pronged attack. First of all, the virus, of course, is an incredible assault to all of us, and we're all suffering increases in anxiety and depression symptoms. I shouldn't say all of us, but it's a common thing. The economic downturn which will follow, which we all hope will be short-lived, is another thing that will affect people as well. We know that periods of economic downturns or economic depression leads to increase in anxiety and depressive illnesses as well. In terms of delivery of care, I think we all expect that more vets will want care to be delivered virtually. That is, lots of people will want to be seen in person, but I think lots of people will appreciate the fact that they can get video links to people, and we all anticipate that there'll be a greater delivery of mental health care virtually in years to come compared to now.
But Josh, before I get to you on the kind of the egalitarian and empathetic, Asheigh or Sue, do you have anything to add to that technical side of it?
Well, one of the things that I've heard projected, and that I think I'm certainly thinking about, is the amount of grief and loss therapy we're going to be looking at potentially. People have lost career, lost hope. Young people have lost the options that they may have envisioned for themselves in the future, in addition to loss of family, relatives, travel. So I think that we're going to be looking at a little bit more of that. And I've also read that to the Kubler-Ross 5 areas of grief, people suggest adding as a 6th one, finding meaning as a way of dealing with grief. So that's sort of what I'm looking at, and I think my colleagues are too.
Ashley?
I agree with everything people have been saying, and I also am really hoping that telehealth is more and more an option and able to be billed for through insurance companies. You know, a lot of insurance companies have been waiving those restrictions, particularly for psychiatric and medical care. It's been moving faster for therapy for a long time, but yeah, I'm hoping that will be a long-term change.
So Josh, from your perspective, from Travis Manion Foundation, the empathy, the caring society, what do you foresee coming out of this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that whatever situation somebody was in going into this crisis, I think it's been exacerbated for better and for worse. So I think if somebody was in had some acute problems or had some negative situations, I think that they're most vulnerable to have those exacerbated throughout this crisis. I think that people that were caring and generous going into this crisis have become even more caring and more generous throughout it. But so people that were already giving of themselves, either through donating to causes or giving of their time and helping others, I see it even more so right now. So for better or for worse, I think it's been exacerbated. But I'll say this, I don't think that anything is predestined. I think that we all still can make positive changes. You know, and especially when it comes to mental health, you know, somebody who was struggling before, they know they're struggling, and I hope that they receive the care that a lot of these organizations can help them receive. I think that people that weren't necessarily struggling before, you know, are not necessarily volunteering themselves to say, I'm hurting now. As veterans, we're so resistant to say, I need help. You know, we're so quick to help somebody else, but we're so resistant to say, I need help. And what I would say to anybody listening is that we're all going through this and to different degrees, understood, but we all need to take these proactive steps. You know, for physical health, we all know the right things to do. You eat right, you exercise, you sleep. You know, whether or not we follow those things and do them well, we know what we're supposed to do. I think for mental health, they're not as well known. And so I would say learn some of those proactive steps that you can take right now before something becomes a crisis, before it becomes a situation, you know, down the road. There are things that we can do right now. So yes, I think people are becoming more caring and more generous. I also, and the opposite is true, but I also think there's very intentional steps that we all can take to improve ourselves.
Great,
One thing
thanks.
that I would add to that is the importance of resilience. And when you're working with somebody in therapy, it's not only what have you gone through, but what have you learned from this, as how have you grown. And after Katrina, for example, it was very clear that when people said that they went through this and survived, and they did these things that were helpful to survive. And, you know, there's some common things, that is reaching out to other people and helping other people, but each individual has different things that they've learned that they've gone back to, whether it's the importance of exercise or the importance of reaching out to others to help them out, that there's a clear lesson of resilience that we are learning that will help us to hopefully bolster our mental health as we go forward.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And I think veterans have that toolbox that sometimes they need to dig back into it to use those tools that they learned in the military, that they still might be very conversant in, but in other cases may have kind of forgotten about them. So that's an excellent point. Steve, can you talk a little bit about, and specifically with the vet centers, about the client counselor confidentiality?
Sure. Yeah, everything we do is obviously HIPAA compliant. I generally tell people when I'm doing outreaches is that I like to see ourselves, or I see us as what I call a one-way mirror. So we have the capabilities of looking at someone's medical records and for the VA medical center if they are currently a patient there. However, the medical center does not have the capability of looking at our records. It's a completely separate system. So it adds that layer of confidentiality, or an extra layer of confidentiality. Any release of information has to be signed for by the client themselves. And so what we're doing as far as phone and video chat is all HIPAA compliant, where we can't really use Zoom because it's not HIPAA compliant. So we're using our own systems right now, but for the most part. But mostly we're doing the phone counseling, which is obviously private. So there's that. But I'm trying to think if there's something else that I wanted to mention about that. Yeah, release of information has to be signed for. We don't let anything out without our clients saying it's okay. But yeah, that's so we are totally 100% HIPAA compliant.
I just want to
Awesome,
jump
thank
in.
you.
Sorry. The
Go ahead.
Cohen Clinic does use Zoom for therapy, and we have a professional license such that our Zoom
Okay.
is HIPAA compliant. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Great. All right, I'm going to interrupt the question and answer real quick. Carlo Arlegoncillo is the City of Philadelphia's veterans rep. He just texted me that his son is going bonkers in the background, and I think we all are familiar with that. So, Carlo, can you talk really quickly about what's going on in Philly, and then we'll go back to question and answer.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, Hugo. Lightning round, right? 30 seconds. So real quick, first off, on behalf of the City Council and the Mayor's Office, I want to commend all organizations represented here and also the participants. I saw a few of the orgs represented, the Chapel for Chaplains, Team RWB, so on and so forth. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep connecting. Doesn't matter what organization you represent, doesn't matter if you're a veteran or not. I think we're all doing the right thing here by spreading the information and just staying in touch with each other. The last thing I want to leave you guys with is there is a Department of Public Health, City of Philadelphia Department of Public Health mental health awareness campaign happening right now. They spun up a new website. It's mindphltogether.com, PHL for Philadelphia. So mindphltogether.com. It's a wealth of resources in addition to the resources mentioned here on this call. They have a 24/7 crisis hotline. The number is 215-685-6440. Again, it's 215-685-6440. They also have a bunch of other free tools and resources on that website. But thank you, Hugo.
Great, Carlo. Can you type in the chat real quick, all the website and the phone number for everybody to see? Great,
Sure,
thanks.
Thank you so much.
And Steve, if you can do the same thing in the chat, put down your contact information for the vet centers, and then for Bucks County Vet Center, and then can you also talk really quickly about types of discharge, who you deal with? Is discharge important?
Sure. Actually, recently it is not. We can see any manner of discharge up to and including dishonorable, bad paper discharge, as it's called. Yeah, that was last year, I believe it was. We were able to time all flows together. I think it was last year we started being able to see bad paper discharges. I believe we came to the realization. I've always thought that it was crazy to restrict that. That's my own editorial opinion. But because a lot of bad conduct discharges are due to issues mostly PTSD. So you have guys and gals that'll act out against a superior, and that creates problems, and then they get kicked out, and then they're sort of set adrift, and that's a recipe for disaster. So so we can see anything up to and including a bad conduct discharge. Discharge condition does not matter to us.
Great, thanks a lot. Ashley, what does telehealth look like now? You mentioned Zoom, and I think you probably speak for the other panelists here, but what does that look like now? What does it feel like? Do you have any hints? What are your observations so far?
Yeah, people, we've been doing telehealth for a while, and for the whole time I've been hearing that it's awkward for people, but I also have people tell me that it's awkward to come into my office. I think it's just awkward to talk to a therapist. And I think, yeah, so we send emails with the link, and people come onto the link and we check where you're located and what your best phone number is in case we get disconnected or there's a medical emergency. Excuse me. And I hear from people, and I agree, that, you know, it can be kind of weird for a while, but after the first couple sessions and once you start to know someone and trust them at least a little bit, get to know them, the screen kind of falls away and it feels a lot more natural. There's a lot of things we've had to figure out, like typically we would hand people clipboards when they come into the office. We've figured out ways around that kind of thing. But for actually having the sessions, it can be natural within a few sessions, in my opinion.
Great, thanks. I think, Dr. Kettl, might be some general questions about, this is not specifically mental health related, but certainly could be. What is the medical center looking like now? If I have an emergency, should I go? What's my decision tree if I should go to the Crescenz Medical Center?
Yeah, the answer is yes. In terms of what it looks like, there's not many people here, meaning that the patients are for the most part not here. There are providers here, but many of the providers are not here as they're doing care virtually from home. To answer the question, should someone come with an emergency, the answer is yes, absolutely. And there are fewer people in the emergency room, so the wait is less. Mental health-wise, what sorts of emergencies? You know, if somebody has suicidal behavior, meaning that they have attempted to do something or they're afraid they will attempt to do something, they should certainly come to the emergency room. And of course, the other big area for us is all sorts of drug-related withdrawal syndromes that continue to need medical care. And those are the types of things that the emergency room was built for, of course, for emergencies. But people should remember that medical emergencies like chest pain or fractures, accidents, those kinds of things, urgent care centers or the emergency room here are available as well. And at least data shows that there's been an increase in death. And what our fear is that people are avoiding the emergency room, even though they should come. Know that everybody who comes gets their temperature taken, everybody who comes gets questions about whether they've been exposed. And so I'm safer walking around the hospital here than I am going to the supermarket, because Lord knows where those people have been, you know, whereas here, everybody gets their temperature taken, questions are being asked.
Gotcha, thanks. Josh, what's TMF doing currently in terms of helping veterans, or you talked about some of the things that Travis Manion Foundation is doing. Can you give examples of things we're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would urge everybody to, you know, using a military term, go back to the basics. You know, I think right now is a great time to do buddy checks. You know, right now is a great time to learn more about those different components of well-being and ensure that we're purposefully putting those into our daily routine, making sure that we're taking care of our physical health and our mental well-being, making sure that we're taking care of our friends, making sure that we're calling them up and asking them, how are you doing? And that's a lot of what TMF is doing. We're training our veteran leaders to call their buddies. We're teaching them different topics of mental health. We're providing them different opportunities to serve. They may not look exactly like they always have. You know, now we use Zoom instead of getting in person. We can't wait to get back in person. But there are still things we can do, even from our house. Things that are safe and ways that we can collect supplies and send them to people in need, or go collect food and make sure we give them to people in need. So, you know, I would say overall, you know, the model hasn't changed at all. It looks a little bit different. But the biggest message for everyone out there is go back to the basics, you know, self-care and buddy checks.
Awesome. So we're getting close to wrapping up. There was a question that came through about kind of geographic reach. So do any of your organizations have restrictions of where people can come to you for help? So Northern New Jersey was the primary example. Do any of you have restrictions on who you will work with based on location?
If I can answer, we have our therapists who are licensed both in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. With online therapy, we can reach people theoretically anywhere, although our licenses are cross-state. And that applies to our support personnel who've been helped as well as others. I'd like to quickly piggyback on something that Asheigh talked about, which is how to use online therapy with our clients and some of the changes. We use a HIPAA compliant platform called DoxyMe, and we're finding as we talk that it's different. It's different, and if we pay attention to the differences, it can be really effective and in fact positive, because we get to see often the extended family, which we would not be able to do when people were in their offices or coming into our offices. So that's what I wanted to add to that.
Great. Thank you. Well, maybe I'll just go down the line. Steve, will you take people from outside Bucks County?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. We, in fact, part of our coverage area is would be Western Burlington County. We'll do Burlington and all that. For Northern New Jersey, there are 5 vet centers in New Jersey. There's one in Bloomfield. There's one in Secaucus. There's one in Ewing in the Trenton area. There's one in Lakewood, and there's one in Egg Harbor Township, down by Atlantic City. So depending on where in North Jersey, I mean, I would suggest somebody contact either Bloomfield or Secaucus. If you go to www.va.gov or vetcenter.va.gov, and there's an interactive map there of all the locations, medical centers, outpatient clinics, vet centers, through benefits administration offices throughout the country. So those that's available on there by every state.
Great. And we're coming up close to a hard stop. Asheigh, any restrictions?
Yes, we also have therapists licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and we've been seeing people far reaches of both those states for a while. And now Delaware has also waived all legal restrictions due to the pandemic. And I have to go see a client, speaking of.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Kettl, anything for the medical center? Thank you, Asheigh.
Anywhere in the country, we can see people. And obviously there are VA medical centers and clinics all over the country, but we can too.
Yep. Josh? National reach?
We can serve people. We can serve people all over the country. Just go to our website, click on join the mission, and we'll get you all connected.
And what's the website?
TravisManion.org.
Great, thanks. Okay, I know we're up on time, so there's been a lot of information shared here today. Thank you very much. Thanks to these organizations representing mental wellness in this area. We appreciate your participation, and thanks for your time today. We will send out the packet. Anybody that's registered, it'll be the slide pack. And obviously this is recorded. We'll figure out a couple places to hang this. So thank you very much. We're going to send out a survey just to get everybody's feedback. And I think, as you can probably guess, this will probably be the way things are going for at least the next 2 or 3 months. Certainly, I think there's going to be a hybrid of in-person and virtual from now on. We'll just have to see what that proportion is. So thank you very much. Stay safe and reach out for any assistance you might need, and do those buddy checks, both if you're a veteran or a non-veteran. I think battle buddy checks are awesome. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a good afternoon.